Dykes, thank you so much for coming on this podcast.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
We've tried to make this happen for 10 months?
Yeah, it's been about 10 months. Yeah.
When I first spoke to you about coming on the podcast on the phone, you left the phone call by saying, I said, what are you going to do for the rest of the day? And you said, I'm just going to pop out and go for a shoot, I think you called it. And I was like, a shoot, like thinking photography shoot. And you're like, no, a parachute.
Yeah.
I'm going to go jump out of a plane.
Yeah.
Have you always been this adventurer, like thrill-seeking person, or is that something you developed over the years?
I would say it's something I developed, although it was very much there. But when I was in school, for example, I was the athletic one, very much into sports. So it wasn't really camping. It was football, it was rugby, so very physical from a young age. But then the adventurous side didn't come out probably till I was about 15, 16, 17.
And what do you think drove that?
I think it was a mix of things, I think one of them was definitely the college course that I went on to, which was a 2-year college course. It was a diploma in outdoor education. And that was when I sort of realized I was very much a kinesthetic learner. I was learning not really from the classroom or from the essays that you get, from the teacher sort of standing there telling you about his or her experiences. I learned from getting out there, making mistakes, trying not to make the same mistake twice, and just sort of hands-on, practical, real sort of work where then I would learn from that and apply it then outside of college as well. And it was actually that point, as well as sort of stories from family and friends of traveling, as well as the likes of David Attenborough shows on TV where you don't want to be watching it from a box, but you want to be out there amongst it. So it was probably a combination of this. And then I realized, I don't want to pursue the sort of university route or the military route like the rest of the students on my college course were doing. I want to do it a little bit more unorthodox. And I started to then come up with a plan from there, working multiple different jobs, fish and chip shop in Wales, lifeguarding, waiting on 240 plus hours a month, cycling every day to and from work, saving up the money for the plans to head off and travel. And from there, it was just projectile.
And where do you think this desire, I know you said you sort of worked out that you learn by doing, which I think is a massively underrated thing to talk about, by the way, because I think so many people learn by doing.
Yeah, right.
And yet we expect children to sit there and learn how to be successful adults in a classroom, which is totally ridiculous.
Yeah, it's backwards. That doesn't work anymore, does it? They don't.
I don't think it's ever worked. But people have been so... back in the day, people were so yes sir, no sir, that we just sort of went along with it. Yeah. And if you think about the distribution of wealth back then, there was only a very, very small percentage of people that were at the top of the food chain, like the entrepreneurs, the CEOs or whatever. And then everyone else were kind of raised and conditioned to be workers underneath them. Whereas now, the as much as obviously wealth distribution is still very top heavy, it's easier to gain wealth. It's easier to become a person of influence or someone who has a bit of power, whereas back then it was train industrial workers and
100%.
Get them into employment, whereas now you have more of an opportunity. Do you think that a big part of your, I guess, career trajectory and it's not even a career really, it's a lifestyle that you live, isn't it? Has come from just wanting to do as opposed to be?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. And sort of how this happened with my career, it was all very organic as well. So it was pretty much 100% by doing. I kind of slipped into this role. I wasn't sort of doing my sort of background research and homework on previous explorers or modern day adventurers. I was literally, when I was out there traveling, I was trying not to spend too much money on the buses and different flights. And I was also trying to get off the beaten track because I left Wales at 19. I went to China. And for the next few weeks, I was very much on the tourist route. I had the same photos, experiences, stories. And yes, I'm meeting lots of different travelers from all over the world by being on that route. But it's not what I was here for. I wanted to mix and mingle with the locals, get to understand the traditions, the culture. And so it was a mix of saving money because I was really on a shoestring budget. It was ridiculous. And wanted to head off, do my own sort of adventure, travel that country by any means, rather than sort of an overnight coach where people are watching a movie with their blanket, going through the mountains of Vietnam at nighttime. So they're not seeing it. They're just waiting to get to their next destination, which is probably a big town or a city. And I was like, no, I And so it was by doing lots of these sort of adventures, which were reckless as well. When I say low budget, £10 on a bicycle, no pump, no puncture repair kit, no map. We literally spent, it was internet cafes where you put the equivalent of like 5 pence. And then you can research the route that you want to take. And so we were just trying to sort of trace the Vietnamese writing for the different towns that we wanted to hit. And like midway, if we were lost, we would just pull this piece of paper out and ask the locals. We would try to pronounce it, but they were clueless. We'd show them. And they were just like pointing us in the direction for over 1,100 miles.
Wow.
You know, it was very, very reckless. Chased by dogs, hit by mopeds, dodged by lorries. Then the last night or the last day we cycled 39 hours straight because the visa was about to expire.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, all the way through the day, all the way through the night, the following day, over 45 hours with no sleep. But that first Vietnam cycle, after sort of 3 weeks in China, sort of going down to Southeast Asia, was the catalyst. And it was all from just doing it, not planning, not even any helmets or, you know, very reckless, but just by doing it. Because I think a lot of people just overthink and overplan now as well, right? They say they're going to do something and then they need everything to be perfect from the get-go. It's like, just start it and you'll figure it out along the way sometimes, depending on what you're doing.
I love that you've said that, because that was going to be my next segue. I really want to talk about your three record holders, three records that you've broken, and all your adventures that you've done. But actually, I think the thing that's most interesting about you is there's a lot of people we're a similar age, but there's also a lot of people from our age group, below and above, and from every generation that have all these grand plans of like what they want to do in the future. Like, I want to achieve this and I want to achieve that and all those things, but they never actually then take the steps in order to make that happen, because it seems like such an overwhelming thing to achieve. Like, I have a goal for Klowt to hit £20 million in revenue by year 7, right? We're 2.5 years into that plan. That's a punchy fucking number, right?
Yeah.
But we're on track to do it. And that's not because I've sat there and gone, okay, we have to have every single strategy in place. Like, what's our marketing plan? I've just gone, right, guys, like, just fucking sell some stuff and like, let's just see if we can go. And we're so scrappy and like trying to get to it. But it's like you said,
on the way, right?
Yeah, it metaphorically, it's the equivalent of like buying that £10 bike and not wearing the helmet and trying to trace a map on a 5p really Wi-Fi connection in Vietnam. Like, it's the same thing, but in business. Do you think that is reckless, or do you think that's just like, I'm going to get to my destination by any means necessary?
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, no one's ever really pulled me up like that. I say reckless, but when I look back, it's like I needed to go there to get where I am today.
Yeah.
So reckless or not, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have been achieving world records further down the line. 100%.
Do you think you use language like reckless because that's what society would tell you it was?
Potentially, yeah.
Do you think it was reckless? Like, for you personally, knowing how you felt on that trip?
Certain aspects of it, yes. You know, I remember cycling over the border illegally, and the police chasing us down to pull us back to the border to get the stamp in our passport, you know. So little things like that, which we didn't plan, maybe would have cost us either extra money, maybe a day sort of behind bars, or, you know, so it was kind of, we maybe got lucky. But again, it's another cool story. It makes me sort of realize that I can get away with doing this sort of stuff. The consequences are never so severe depending on what it is, but at least I've sort of given it a go. I've added that to my sort of resume of different experiences that I sort of rely on in the future, you know, because it's like the more problems that you face, or the more you face adversity, it could be finance within business, the more sort of experience you gain and the more risks you're then willing to take, because you know how to cope with handling those sort of adversities that you face.
It's interesting, is I always say to people, you can come back from anything, like unless you've like murdered someone. Please don't do that. It's very little things, very few things that you can't come back from. Like, even things like missed credit card payments or missed mortgage payments or missed rent or like being evicted or anything like that. These are all things that, obviously, I don't want to downplay them for anyone that's been through that, but these are all things that you can come back from. Like, I'm sitting here as a business owner. My first business went bankrupt. I'm divorced. Like, the two major things that I tried in my life failed. And I'm still alive, right? Like, I'm surviving. I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving.
Yeah, exactly.
So do you think, you know, again, like, we'll talk about your world records and your kind of adventures in a bit more detail in a second, but do you think this sort of attitude that you have of like, just fuck it, see what happens, has always been there, or do you think that's something that you sort of you've learned through, like, did your parents instill you in that, or did your environment instill you in that, or is that something you think you were born with?
I think that's a good one. I would say that it's something I potentially learned. Mm-hmm. I think growing up in Wales, my parents were obviously very supportive. Some stuff I would do and I would try to hide from them because I didn't want them to know, as
worry.
A typical sort of teenager. But then it was kind of, once I left the UK, the West, the sort of rules and the legislation, the health and safety, and ventured out to Southeast Asia, I realized I could get away with doing more stuff. And so the more stuff that I did and got away with, the more stuff I would want to do that wasn't really sort of in the books,
Yeah.
And so I think it was Southeast Asia that molded me that sort of way. And just seeing the locals there and how relaxed they are. And, I remember, now I understand sort of health and safety. For example, back here in the UK, I remember being a lifeguard and I couldn't even hand a float to a kid who was going into the deep end in case he put the float underwater and it popped up and bopped his nose and gave him a nose. But I'm like, I'm like, this is ridiculous.
I said to my friend the other day, I'm 100% the guy's going to clip this and it's going to get put on TikTok and someone's going to cancel me because it will get taken out of context. But I said to my friend the other day, I was like, we need to bring back bullying. Like, we really need to bring back that, like, playground, like not obviously physical, but like that, you're, this, that, and the other. Because I was bullied as a kid. I'm sure you were picked on. Everyone was picked on.
Bit of name calling, right?
Yeah, but that's what builds up that kind of resilience to be like, piss off.
Skin.
Like, as if you can't give a float to a child in case it hit them on the nose.
It's ridiculous. I couldn't believe it.
God, what a nanny state. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
No. And then obviously I was in Southeast Asia. I was in Thailand, and again, crazy, but you've got these locals on, helping build skyscrapers on bamboo, no helmets, and you're just like, fucking hell. Because they're
like a bit of rope around there.
Yeah, you get back here and it's like, mind the step, and then a sign saying read the sign. And it's like, oh my, I can see the step.
Yeah.
And so
I loved it when we had COVID and there were the signs being like, please stay 2 meters away from each other.
Yeah. I know, and sing happy birthday twice whilst you're washing your hands. Like, fuck.
Like signs on how to wash your hands.
Right, you got ridiculous.
Oh, God.
And that's one big reason why I remember sort of wanting to leave the UK, because I thought, surely the rest of the world isn't like this.
Yeah.
People suing over anything, people sort of, where there's a blame, there's a claim.
Do you think we have a victim mentality in the West?
I think so. Very much compared to the East anyway, is what I've noticed.
It's funny because I've got a friend whose family immigrated to the States when they were really young. Like, she's American, but her parents were immigrants.
Right.
And she always says that the immigrant mentality is the American dream, and that's why there's so many Americans who are in that kind of like top 1% or whatever who have come from immigrants, and it's because they don't have that victim mentality that we have.
Yeah.
We're like, oh no, poor us. Yeah. Oh, isn't it terrible that this is happening to me? Whereas like they're just like, crack on.
It's true,
and
isn't it?
you either get through it or you sit and waste away.
And we love it, don't we? We love it. I get it myself. When it comes to books or TV, they really want to hear sort of a horrific or traumatizing story of my upbringing, or you must be pretty messed up in the head, or you must have a dark story, you must be running from something, or you must be trying to discover yourself. And it's like, I fucking love this world we live in. Great upbringing. Yes, no financial background, but I wanted to change that for myself through experience, through lifestyle, doing what I love. And you see it time and time again on TV shows as well. It's never really, not always, it's sort of the best shows. The best singer that wins X Factor. It's the person that says, I want to make my grandmother proud because she's got this. And it's like, give him the golden buzzer.
Yeah.
It's people pull on the sort of heartstrings, don't they, and give emotional stories because the Brits absolutely love it. They thrive on it.
But I think there's a dark side to that, which is we also expect a handout.
Yeah.
Like, my life has been
it's
really
that
difficult.
Victim mentality again.
Yeah, my life's been really difficult, so please give me this thing.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Sure. It's the cheap way in, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're cheating yourself. Yeah. I think.
And certainly as an employer, I've noticed that, not with my team. My team are fantastic, but when I've interviewed candidates, you know, there really is that expectation of like, oh, well, I've had a really tough life, so like you should be giving me this job. And it's like, that's not how employment works, unfortunately. Like maybe with other people, but not with this girl. Like that's not going to fly at Klowt. Like
so good.
we are I'm ruthless. Like we have the reason we've grown so quickly and, you know, we're able to hire all these people and do fun things like this is because we are relentless in our pursuit of that profit. And if you're going to be a part of an organization like that, which everyone claims they want to be, everyone, you know, and again, it's not a generational thing, but I just look at social media, everyone's like, oh, I want the Rolls Royce and I want this and that and I want the other. But they're also the same people going, please, sir, can I have some more? And it's like, come on, like be accountable for your own life. Of course, you have to start from the bottom. You start from the bottom. I've started from the bottom. Everyone in the world starts from the, well, most people do anyway. Start from the bottom. And it's what you do with the time and the skills that you have that determines whether or not someone's going to go, yeah, come on then, like
100%.
Let's do this. So you spoke a little bit about your first trip to China. You were 19 when you did that? What, teenager. So why China, first of all? Like, why did China, Vietnam, Southeast Asia come about?
I think with China, that was the culturally most sort of diverse place to the West, you know, to the UK. Had its own sort of social media, had its own sort of, didn't have Google. And obviously it rings better, like it features in a lot of people's minds, but not many people go there. And so I was kind of like, right, I want that to be the first place that I arrived, straight from Manchester Airport into Beijing, 2010.
Just madness, I bet.
Yeah, because I know that people buy this sort of around the world ticket and they'll kind of ease themselves into that. They'll go sort of west first, sort of America, South America, New Zealand, Australia, and then over to Southeast Asia, up to China and then back home. And so I just wanted to drop myself in the deep end, you know, culturally, and so different to the West.
What did that trip do to your life? Like, how did it change you? Because it sounds like it did.
Like the first sort of traveling when I first left. Yeah, that was the biggest stepping stone. I didn't know what I wanted to do coming out of school and coming out of college, but I said to myself, well, there's loads of opportunities out there. There has to be. There must be so many more jobs out there than what the careers advisor is letting on or knows, you know? And so I was kind of like, if I can...
And also notice those career... I don't know if you know this, or thought this, but I always thought when the career advisors were giving us advice, I was like, yeah, but you're a career advisor. Like, how do you know how to get in these jobs? Because like, you couldn't even get them. Like, anyway,
exactly.
That's what my arrogant little 15-year-old self used to think.
No, I know what you mean. And it's very sort of traditional, isn't it? It's old school titles. And like, it's great if you want to be a doctor, scientist or whatever. The careers advisor's there to help you with that. But what if you don't want to? What if you want to be?
Also, the world is so much bigger now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
you can be a virtual psychologist these days.
Right.
It's crazy.
There's crazy occupations. Like, I've been traveling. There's things that are a job, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I had no idea, because you never taught it in school again. Yeah. So I just wanted to get out there, travel, see what was out there, sort of develop myself as well, put myself in. I was always curious as well to push myself, because I was only 19. I was a baby. And I wanted to get out in the world. I wanted to face adversity, because I know that also helps you grow and develop. And
where do you think that knowledge came from? Sorry to interrupt you, because I think a lot of people don't know that that's what shapes you. I feel like you're a stone. Yeah. And the more stress that you have in your life is the more it chips away to create the person that you're meant to be. Yeah. But we don't get told that. So where do you think that came from?
Where did that come from? It must have been certain movies that I watched, stories that were told. And I just remember sort of, if I'm facing stuff, like if I'm summiting a certain mountain, it's going to be the smallest mountain first, or the jungle, it's going to be a smaller jungle first. But if I make it through and know myself a little bit more and overcome certain challenges and face the adversities, I'll come back out stronger, ready to take on a bigger mountain or a bigger jungle. And I think I sort of connected the dots and realized that applies to life in general. And overcoming that mountain or that jungle, I'll come back to civilization and I'll face a different kind of jungle. But from the experience I've built up out in the wilderness, I'll be able to manage better, because it's not a case of living and dying in the corporate world like it is in the wild. It's a case of winning or losing, little wins or big gains, you know? And so I did know that from a very young age, actually. But again, I don't know what it was specifically that made me realize that. But it was that, and it was also realizing that life goes fast. And that's not really normal for a 16, 17-year-old, you know, planning for travels, to think that, oh, life will go fast and you only get one life. How can I best sort of fulfill this one life that I've got? And so I knew that from a young age again, and thought, sort of matching these up, I wanted to get out there. And I didn't know I wanted to do adventures and expeditions. I just wanted to see what happens, you know, throw myself sort of out of the comfort zone, drop myself in the middle of China. And I think I only booked the first few nights of hotel, no other flights booked, because I know that you sort of do, I think it was STA Travel that would book different flights around the world and book you into all of the different hotels, but then you're on a schedule then. And I wanted to be completely out of that routine and just leave it all down to myself to make sure that I manage my finances right, make sure I get the visas on time, make sure I book the hotels and the flights and have this itinerary. And so all of this sort of excited me, and I just wanted to get out there and see what was going to happen.
All the things that you mentioned there, to me, sound like this was the making of you as an adult. Like you said, like most of these companies will, you know, with grads or students or people on a gap year, right, here's your itinerary, follow that.
Yeah.
Whereas you've gone, actually, no, I'm gonna take control of my life, and I'm gonna control my finances, which probably taught you a lot about how to be a successful adult, not just how to survive in China on a budget.
Yeah, exactly. No, it really did. And that was also my sort of, I didn't do great at school. And so I wanted to go out there. I wanted to develop more my English skills, because I would be speaking to more people. I would be setting up emails. As a business, you're sort of liaising with people all day, every day. My maths, I knew that I would improve my maths because I'd be now dealing with different currencies on my travels. So it wasn't just the extremes and overcoming adversity and the challenges. It's everything that would develop me as a young adult surrounding all of this. And
was that a conscious decision, do you think? Or is that just something that manifested while you were there?
No, I think it was also a conscious decision. I remember actually thinking this, and maybe I was just trying to convince myself deeply of all the benefits that traveling will bring so that I don't bail, you know? And so I think by overthinking everything that I would face and how useful it would be in the long term, even if I only set out and travel for 6 months, it's still really useful for a 19-year-old, you know? And I think people in school should, if I had it my way, I would have some form of initiation test. Coming of age, 16, 17 or 18, drop these in the middle of the jungle or the middle of the desert, supported, you know, they're going to be fine, they'll be safe, but face the adversity, and then they'll come back here and they'll realize how good they've got it. And they'll also realize how capable they are, and that they can do things without parents or without, you know, it's that confidence that's vital.
I actually think we really lack confidence. And I do wonder whether that's the biggest difference between the West and like other nations, is that I don't think children here are raised with confidence.
Yeah.
Like we sit there and go, like, so a good example of this is someone said to me, when you're a child, you bring your painting that you've done at school to your mum.
Yeah.
And your mum goes, "Oh my God, darling, isn't this beautiful?" And they put it on the fridge, and they go, "Aren't you clever with your painting?" Right? So it puts value on the painting.
Yeah.
As opposed to saying to the child, like, "Aren't you clever for painting the painting? Why have you done that? Isn't that smart?" And even little interactions like that. Now I'm a mother. I'm like, I'm so conscious of trying to make my children feel valuable in themselves as opposed to for what they produce. So the grades they receive or the thing that they build or whatever it is. And I know that sounds really airy-fairy, and the kind of like logical part of my brain is like, that's fucking ridiculous. But it is actually true. Like you learn confidence, and your confidence is built in you from such a young age that when you go into adulthood, oftentimes I feel like, to your point, like, you know, you said that people should go traveling when they're 16, 17. A lot of the people that I'm interviewing even now, and they're like 21, 22, 23, have no goals. They have no purpose. They have no idea what they want to do with the rest of their life. And that's problematic for a number of reasons. Number one, if you have no goal, what the fuck are you aiming for?
Right.
If you're not aiming for anything, of course you're going to have mental health problems. Of course you're going to feel lost. Of course you're going to feel completely misaligned with what you're doing and who you are and the things that you're seeing and being and the employers are working for, because where is the North Star? Like, it's like, to your, you know, actual lived experience, it's like plonking you in the middle of China with no map and no compass and just going work your way out.
Exactly.
Like, of course you're going to feel overwhelmed and scared. So I think that's one thing. But the second thing is, if you don't have a goal or anything sort of to aim for, like, why are you working? Like, why are you leaving your house? What is the point of all this?
Yeah. So
you'll just sit there and rot away. Like, you know, you were saying that all these stories, which I can't wait to dig into. It sounds to me like actually you getting from you know, where you landed in China all the way through to Southeast Asia, like the journey itself was the most important bit.
For sure.
So that's why goals are so important.
Yeah, they are. And I wonder where that comes from. Why is there so many lost people? Is it because there's more opportunities now than there ever was before, and there's sort of more to choose from? Or is it because we're more pampered from a younger age, and we're told that you can achieve anything, but we're not guided on how we should be achieving that? You know, or is it because nowadays sort of most kids do have that safety net of falling back on to their parents, or their parents helping them with a deposit on the house, or, you know, so there's never really that sort of true push because they're not really going to lose anything. I wonder where it comes from. Because when I was younger, my parents were always trying to instill that confidence in me, you know, even if it was sort of going up to pay the bill as a youngster, or go and ask for some sauce if we're at the restaurant, you know, instead of it being the adults dealing with adults and talking, they would just say, "I'll go and ask Simon over there for," you know, or whatever. And that, I think, really sort of helped in just speaking to strangers, you know, which also is an important step to what everything that we do, you know, it's that communication skill set. And I just don't know where people get lost.
It's really interesting, actually, those 3 points, because I genuinely believe the first is, I was talking to one of the guys here earlier, and I was like, why do you think people are so lost? They have no goals. Like and their kind of conclusion was, one, social media has made it appear that you can do all these different things now. Yeah. And so there is this kind of over-analysis paralysis of like, oh, my friend's doing social media, so maybe I should do social media, but actually I don't really like social media. I want to do art, but actually art doesn't pay any bills and I want to have that Ferrari. So like, and so they just get completely paralyzed. But I think it's also the combination of that plus this whole pampered thing, which is my generation and up have mollycoddled their children within an inch of their life. Like, you talk about these helicopter parents, right, who'd be like, oh, Stevie, don't climb on that thing, you might fall off. Like, like that is the worst way to raise a parent. I think Jordan Peterson said you should let your children do dangerous things carefully, because that's what builds their confidence. So my son is just a total maniac. Like, my mum's always like when she sees him like running around, because like I remember one Christmas he was running around the island bench and he was wearing socks. And I told him to take his socks off because I said he's going to fall over and hurt himself. Of course, he didn't listen to me. So I was like, well, I've told him. He fell, hit his teeth on the floor, concrete floor, and his 2 teeth went in. Luckily, he had a dummy, so it kind of pushed him back out again. But it was just covered in blood. And my mom was like, oh my God, like, why did you let him run around with his socks on? And I was like, I told him to take them off. He was old enough at the time to know what mummy's saying and understand that that's going to hurt him. But I needed him to figure out, like, that's what happens. Never done it again. So I think there is this culture that we have of like, oh, don't let our children hang off that monkey bar because they're only 4 years old. Why? And then they grow up not knowing why. You know? And then they grow up being scared, more importantly, to take risks. It's not the monkey bars that they're scared of anymore. It's asking for that promotion. It's asking for that pay rise. It's telling that husband that they don't actually want to be with, they want a divorce. It's et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Which actually limits your life experience. Follows through in all life, doesn't it? For sure. It limits your life experience. And I love that you brought up talking to strangers, because that's my favorite thing to do. And people think I'm nuts. I'll be on like the tube or something. I'll be like, good morning. And everyone's like, is she going to stab us? Like, because in London, which you're going to find now you've moved because you're coming from Wales. Right, country boy in a big city. Yeah, Londoners do not want to be spoken to. No. I'm Australian, right? Which I've lived here for a long time. But, you know, we're very friendly in Australia. Like, you have a full-blown supermarket chat with the lady in the milk aisle about like her grandchild's party. And you'll know everyone's name by the time you've left. That's great, isn't it? That's great. The milk aisle. But here, there's no way. Like, if you smile at people, they think you're crackers. Yeah. Do you think talking to strangers has always been something that you've done? You mentioned they're your parents, like sending you up to go and like, you know, ask to go and stuff. I think so. I think they would do that because they realized that I was quite shy as a youngster. And so they noticed that and thought, right, we need to get rid of this shyness and bring out this more confidence. And so they like sort of implemented these little things and put them in place so that it would, and it worked. And then now, like, it was only last week I saw a poor lady with a suitcase at the bottom of the steps in one of the subway stations, trying to get to the top, and like grown-ass men were just walking past her. Yeah. And I just, because country boy, you know, I'll talk to anyone, just grabbed the suitcase. Obviously didn't take it, told her, help me up to the top. Bye. Bye. And she was super thankful. And I was like, you must have had about, I don't know, 20, 30. And it looked like she was trying to get people's attention, but no. It always amazes me as humanity that kind of stuff happens. I've done similar things where like there's been mums with babies, and like there's plenty of blokes that have, and the thing is, it's not about gender, but actually for me it is. Like if you're a woman with children and there's like 50 odd blokes walking past, like I would expect one of you to be like, hey, do you want a hand? Because you're physically bigger than me, first of all, and you can see I've got babies and things with me.
I like that you like that, because there's also toxic femininity, right? Where it's like
no one talks about that. No one I would love to talk about that with you. No one talks about toxic femininity. No one talks about this. I can do everything a man can. I don't need your help. I hate them. But like that narrative is so dangerous. It really completely divides. And of course you have that on the flip side of that, which are these men that think women are these awful thing, and they're really they're all saying the same thing. They're saying the same thing about each other. And actually what I think was so wonderful about like the 50s, 60s, 70s, etc. And prior to that, sure, but like at that time particularly, was there was a real respect level with everyone. Like women really respected like what men brought to the table, and men really respected what women brought to the table. And it's not necessarily about the time back then of like women couldn't do, you know, all these jobs and stuff, which absolutely they should have every single right to do, and including pay and all these different types of things. But it was just that everyone understood that we brought different things to the table, and that was a good thing, as opposed to being like, well, he does that, so I want to do that, or she does this, so I want to do. Like, why are we so divided?
Now, hasn't it? Yeah, it's gone too much. It's gone too much, and it's gone even crazier now. With the whole, but you can't even open a door for a woman anymore without worrying that she's going to get upset that you've done it. Exactly. I'll never forget one of my friends. You cannot be a gentleman now,
because someone might go, "Why have you done that? Is it because I'm a woman?" Yes, actually, it is. Because it's a nice thing to do.
Like, what's wrong with being a gentleman?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, we need more gentlemen in the world, and we also need more women saying that that's what is a good thing to be, because I know categorically, and obviously this is anecdotal evidence because I surround myself with people that I get on with. But I know categorically that the women I speak to, like, we're all feminists. Like, we all believe in equality of the sexes. We all believe in equal play. But I would never tell you I was a feminist, because you're going to think I'm one of those chicks.
Yeah, right. You don't want to associate with one of those who take it too far.
I don't want to bash men. I think men are great. I have a dad, I have a brother. They are wonderful. I have a son. Men are fantastic.
That's so cool.
Right? But I love them. Men are fantastic, just as the men in my life love women. And that's how it should be. It shouldn't be this, you know, patriarchy versus toxic femininity stuff. Really, it should be we're all human beings. Let's all understand that we all have different ways of doing things, and biologically have different ways of contributing to the world. And stop letting powers, which is genuine. If we have a look at it, like, what is it? Chaos is a ladder. The reason why we're all so divided is it suits legislation, it suits governments, it suits everyone when there's chaos going, because then you don't know what's going on over there, right?
There's too much of so much, right? There's literally too much of so much.
I think everyone's worried also about if they say the wrong thing, that the mob is going to come for them. And the thing is about the mob is the mob actually isn't made up of that many people. It's made up of loud people. I think it's important to notice that. It's interesting, actually. I was speaking to the guys in the team about this the other day, about the Dylan Mulvaney. I don't know if you've seen that.
No.
She's a transgender influencer on TikTok.
Right.
And she was put on Bud Light cans
yeah,
as part of their like kind of inclusion campaign.
Okay.
And I said to the guys, I was like, that is the dumbest placement I've ever seen in my life. And one of the guys was like, what do you mean? Because they thought I was going to say something like,
right.
what? I mean, I did say, I've said many wild things, but this is not the wildest thing I've said.
Yeah.
I said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life, because Bud Light's predominant audience are white, middle-aged men, right? And you're going to put a transgender woman on the can of a beer that's mainly bought by people who don't understand that person, right, just to be considered by the mob as inclusive.
That
And of course the executive that put her on the can has been fired. Like, it was the dumbest decision in the world. They should have gone with a drink that makes sense
elsewhere.
But this is going back to what we're saying about the mob. Everyone is trying to please the mob.
Yeah, it's true.
No one's actually going, that doesn't really make sense.
Yeah.
And the people that are saying that doesn't really make sense are just getting cancelled.
Yeah, for sure.
And the thing is, everyone's really scared to say the wrong thing, because if you say the wrong thing, then you're done. And it's like, but that's not the world that we live in. No. Like, we need to have difference of thought. We need to have a diversity of conversation and opinion, because you know what the opposite of that is? Fascism.
Mm-hmm.
And that is kind of what I feel like we live in at the minute on social media, is a fascist regime.
Yeah. No, it's scary. It's scary where it's going. And it is social media, isn't it? I think it is internet. I think it is more connection now. It's, dare I say, heading in the direction of China.
Yeah,
sure.
100%. It's like, oh, well, you can't say that. No. Why not? Not because I said so.
Yeah.
That is fascism. That's communism. What, you can't think your own thoughts. You can't challenge authority. You can't say, actually, I'm not sure about that.
Right.
And everyone's going, no, you can't. I'm like, you can. And if you don't, do you want to go and live under a regime like that? Because that's currently what we're working towards.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very easy for people to take control of controllable people.
Yeah.
And you're incredibly controllable if you never expose yourself to any other kind of thought other than what you think is true. Yeah, it's a wild world.
It is
a wild world that we live in.
It's one of those rabbit holes, isn't it, that you can really go down and down.
I know. I could do a whole podcast on it, honestly.
For sure.
Yeah, it's another time maybe. So your 3 world records.
Yes.
Did you intend to set those, or did it just happen because you're a bit mad and decide to go on these wild adventures?
Yeah, a bit of both actually. The Mongolia one was my first sort of record. But I didn't know it was a record until about 6 months before actually attempting it. So I was planning it for a good 10 months. So the first 4 months, I was just going to do it for the pure adventure to see if I could do the challenge.
And for those who don't know you and know your story, like, so what talk us through like what those expeditions were?
Yeah, so we've got Mongolia, which was, I became the first person to walk solo and unsupported across Mongolia. So that was 3 weeks over the Altai Mountains, 5 weeks across the Gobi Desert, and 3 weeks through the Mongolian steppe. Now, when I say solo and unsupported, I mean like no one out there with me, no van following from afar that's going to like pick me up. I was actually pulling a trailer that weighed 18 stone, 120 kilograms, carrying all of my provisions needed to survive on sort of a 4-point harness, if you like. And it was, again, over 3,000 meters. There were wolves, there were snow blizzards. Then the desert was just 40 plus degrees Celsius. Almost lost my life in the desert. And then I had to contend with the steppe, which was the remaining 3 weeks. After that, we went to Madagascar, and that was 1,600 miles. It took 155 days to complete. And this one was just relentless. Out of all of those days, I don't think there was a day that it was just pleasant day's hike. It was held up at gunpoint by the military. It was avoiding the bandits. It was catching the deadliest strain of malaria. It was crocodile infested rivers. It was spider bites that were infected. It was leeches. It was hacking through the jungle. It was carrying a chicken called Gertrude, which I'll have to tell you about, protecting me from the bad spirits and witches of the rainforest. Very superstitious, the Malagasy. I'll get to that. And it was almost like Mongolia was a very tough mental battle, and then Madagascar was the physical battle. But then I upped that, and the most recent record was a 4,000-mile journey walking the entire length of the Yangtze River in China, which took 352 days to complete. And that, again, similar altitude to Everest Base Camp, just over 5,100 meters. Well, dropping down, but for the first few months you're at that altitude with the bears, which we were stalked by a pack of wolves. I lost, I think it was 10, 11 different members that joined me, of the 16 that joined me at different parts. They had to abandon the trip due to altitude sickness, fear of wildlife, injury or illness. It was just relentless, especially the first sort of 6 months of the Yangtze River. And so they're the 3 main ones that I did, with lots of sort of crazy stories within. But what led me probably to that first trip in Mongolia was all of the previous adventures. You've got the Vietnam cycle. You've got when I illegally crossed the border from Thailand to Myanmar via the jungle and was taken in by a Burmese hill tribe and sort of taught how to survive in the jungle. You've got the Himalayas, again, which I was on the border there with Pakistan, another semi sort of illegal crossing, but great fun.
I love how you're like semi-illegal.
Yeah.
It's like half legal, half not.
It's like, I gotta be careful. And these sort of adventures just continue to grow bigger and better. Tried my hand at Australia. Australia was too expensive for me.
I'm trying to go home for January next year, and the flights are wild.
Oh God, yeah. I was fruit picking. I was in Darwin, right up north.
Darwin. There. Oh my God. For anyone that's never been to Darwin, Darwin is like the most humid, hellish place on earth. You literally will have a shower, leave your house, and like you've literally just had a shower because you're soaking in sweat. It's just like wild.
It is. That's like proper Australia, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, you should try to go to Cooper Pedy. Cooper Pedy is proper Australia.
Yeah, really.
Cooper Pedy is like in buttfuck nowhere.
Yeah.
They live in rocks. Like the houses are carved out into rock because it's so hot you can't have homes. They have to be built into the rock because the rock's cool, right?
Yeah.
It's wild. You can buy dynamite in the supermarket.
It's
east. It's towards the center.
Okay, got you.
Yeah, down
directly
east.
south. Yeah, got you.
Straight there.
Wow.
Good old Aussie.
Yeah,
we love it.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I guess, doing all of these adventures, I then settled down in Thailand 2 years. I was a scuba diving instructor, Muay Thai fighter. Great 2 years, but I was starting to get a bit restless then. I was like, okay, 2 years is enough. I want to do more adventures. And I started to miss all of my previous. And then I was kind of like, what can I do next that's going to be bigger, better, more badass than the previous adventures that I've done? And I wanted it to be a hike and not a cycle, because I'd done like lots of different variations and modes of transport, whereas I wanted this to be more survival based. I was kind of planning that. It went from doing 100 miles to then deciding I'm going to walk the entire length, 1,500 miles. I thought best way to go about it is find those people who have done it before. I got more teams involved. We realized that someone had attempted 3 times but failed on all 3 occasions. But I reached out to this guy. I sort of put an email together. What dangers do I look out for? And he was a nice guy. He got back saying you need to watch out for the drunken nomadic drifters, the grey wolves, the sandstorms, the snow blizzards, the steep ravines, the stagnant water, the dry wells. The list went on and on and on. And it was more than I anticipated. I remember thinking, fuck, that's a lot of dangers for a 22-year-old beach bum living on an island. You know what I mean? And I was like, well,
I've been scuba diving for 2 years.
Yeah, you know? And I realized he was a soldier. He was a desert explorer. He was in his 30s or 40s. And this was enough to put me off slightly. I stopped planning Mongolia for a few weeks and started to look at European countries, safer, more people. But then, I realized just because he didn't find a way to do it doesn't mean it can't be done. And if I get the right logistical team, do the right preparation, the right training, maybe I can complete this journey. So I decided, to pursue it. I gave up my life in Thailand. I flew back to the UK with £200 to my name. Had to live with my mum and dad. Couldn't afford gym membership. Had a tractor tire chopped off in my back garden where I would flip this tractor tire, beat it with a sledgehammer. So all of the training for a world first was done in my back garden.
I love that.
And the budget was roughly about $5,000.
That's just proof, honest, by the way, that you don't need money to do anything.
Right? The insurance was invalid because they don't support unsupported trips to Mongolia. We had the flights, we had the electronics. And so after that all sort of went, I had about $1,000 left whilst I was there now in the country to make it happen. Couldn't afford a decent trailer to pull behind, a factory made sort of carbon fiber, lightweight trailer. That wasn't happening. It was a family friend who built it in his backyard. Wow. So it was mild steel. So already carrying nothing, it's 40 kilograms whilst empty.
Yeah.
It's, but again, you're bang on. And I think I learned that from the likes of the Vietnam cycle, £10 bicycle, off we go.
Yeah.
Yes, reckless, maybe, but also very sort of astute and making the most of what you've got, And I think a lot of people don't really do that.
I think people and businesses, I think one of the reasons why we've done as well as we have, obviously we're not even scratching the surface of where we need to be and where we want to be yet,
right?
Is we have no budget. There is no budget for marketing. There is no budget for that, this, that, and the other. Yeah. It's right, okay, we need to make that happen. All right, so how can we do it for free?
Yeah, it's the way, right?
And personal branding, I'll get into it in a minute, but that's where most of my make it happen for free has come from. I'm how can I reach loads of people? I have no budget to market this. Mm-hmm. I need to reach 1 million people. Can't afford to buy data or phone call lists or pay any more marketing companies. So how the fuck am I going to do that?
Right.
Get them to come to me.
Yeah.
That's the cheapest way.
That's so cool.
So yeah.
So there's ways, isn't there?
There's ways.
It's just sort of thinking outside the box, is it? And doing it differently when it comes to business.
Yeah.
It's not sort of following the trend. It's kind of remapping your own route in business in a way.
Yeah. And I also think that companies that often get called the most disruptive or innovative or whatever are always the ones that are the scrappiest.
Right.
They're always the ones who are waiting for the crumbs at the end and they make the most with the crumbs as opposed to getting a big fat slice of the cake and it's already made. we don't have that option. Like it's this or nothing.
Yeah.
So you take the crumbs and you do what you can with the crumbs.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Otherwise,
when there's no other option, I guess
there isn't.
That does spur you on even more, doesn't it?
There is no other option.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. You were saying that, you flew back to the UK with £200 to your name. It's quite reminiscent of when I founded this business. Obviously, I wasn't like tracking the wealth, but I quit my job to start this business. I had no savings. Like it was literally this works or we're fucked. Like my mortgage was due in two weeks time. I had kids in childcare that I needed to pay for, ex-husband who wasn't making any money. So it was on me. It was like burn the boats. Yeah. We're doing this. And if it doesn't work, we're all going down. And I think it was that actually meant that at least the first sort of 3 to 6 months was really profitable, because I was like, well, probably like you, if we don't keep moving forwards, then I'm screwed. Yeah. Because there's a bear behind me. Yeah. There's wolves behind me, right? Yeah. Except mine were mortgage brokers.
The sharks.
Yeah, right. You had bears, I had sharks.
Yeah.
But it's the same kind of thing. It's like, well, what's the alternative? Like stand still and die? No, you have to keep.
You've got to do
going.
What make the most of what you've got in that moment in time, because if you work hard enough, that will change, and then that will be a good story just as it is now, Yeah. And the grind is still very much there. But you've got sort of that experience now, your capabilities more, right? Because you've been in much worse situations. And so if you have to really push hard again, you've got it. And I love that.
What was your darkest moment, do you think?
In all of the travels, there were three darkest moments. I think the first one that I experienced was in the Gobi Desert. I was sort of walking through the middle of the Gobi Desert. It was 5 weeks. I'd already faced 3 weeks in the Altai Mountains, so I'd already lost weight. I was in sort of minus 15 degrees Celsius conditions. And so I never really felt like rehydrating because I was cold. The weather has that effect on you. And by the time I hit the desert, I was probably slightly dehydrated anyway. So I planned that wrong. And then I couldn't start drinking, and you're getting dehydrated.
Yeah.
And so I
better hydrate.
And so I really sort of couldn't hydrate enough, because I had to ration the water because I had set wells. So I had confirmed water sources and unconfirmed water sources. And then as I approached an unconfirmed water source after a couple of weeks, it was dry. And I now had to... I kind of had a plan whereby that's fine, because I'll make sure I'll double up from the previous confirmed water source and have double the water. But it's easy to say that. But when you're actually out there 40 degrees, you do go through that water because you're really sort of thirsty. And now I had, from this point, I continued to walk, rationing the last remaining dribbles of water that I had, which was now hot water. I slipped into severe dehydration, heat stroke. I was delirious, I was hallucinating, and I could almost feel my organs drying up, like this dry sensation on the inside of my body. And I just became very weak. And this trailer now felt like 500 kilograms, because the thin tires that I had were now sinking into the soft sand. So it wasn't building that momentum. And I just remember hiding under my trailer, and I'd be under there for a good hour at a time. As my legs would hang out, they would just be absolutely burning. There was no breeze, there was no natural shelter, there was no cloud coverage. And I remember eventually it got to a point where I was like, if I don't keep getting up and pushing on, I'm going to die out here in the Gobi Desert. And it was that realization, I think, that because I went through a sort of thought process where I was feeling sorry for myself. I was thinking of family and friends. I was then, playing out how reckless all of this was. But then I sort of, it's funny, before I went out to Mongolia, I recorded a voice memo for myself as inspiration. I would hear Ash back at home with his family, warm, dry, belly full of tea, has eaten, and the positivity of sort of, if you make this is what can happen. If you don't make it, it's back home. It's back to lifeguarding or back to the fish and chip shop. You have no other choice. I gave myself a stern talking to, and I told myself I wouldn't ever listen to that voice memo unless I really, really needed to. And it was that point in the Gobi that I pulled out. I listened to that voice memo, and then I decided to get rid of the sort of feeling sorry, victim sort of mentality, fuck off that, and focus in on the only option that I have right now, which is to survive. And I'm a big believer of like the law of attraction, visualization, you know, and so I was kind of trying to visualize 4 days. I now had 4 days to get to the next water source, and it's confirmed there's going to be people. I can rest. And I did have, the only evacuation plan that I had was text only to my logistics manager in the capital, and I'd need to allow for him to get to me at least 3 to 4 days, and then another 2 days to get me out. And I didn't believe I could survive 6 days or more, but I did believe I could maybe survive 4 days. So instead of focusing on the days, because I was in too much agony, I focused on 100 meters. I could see 100 meters in front of me. I would take a feature point in the distance. I'd be like, let's try to get to there. I'd get out of my trailer, strap the 4-point harness on, walk for 100 meters, 200 meters if I could, hide under my trailer for no more than 5 minutes, get out, walk another 100 meters. And I did this for 4 days, and I just about made it to that community. I collapsed. I was in a real bad way. Took me about 8 days to recover. My urine was pretty much black. And I was scared now. I had a lot of fear from the sun, facing the desert again, how fast it can take you. And so I was very hesitant, but I was also very dogged. I remember speaking to my logistics manager, and he says, you know, do you want to pack it in? I was like, look, if I have to stay in this god-awful community for a month or 2 months, that's what I'm going to do to make sure I'm fully recovered to be able to complete this expedition. So that was a dark time that I learned a lot about myself from, and the capabilities and the mistakes that I never sort of, I've never been dehydrated again since, you know?
Yeah, I bet.
Another one was sort of malaria. Bit of a shorter story, I'll keep it short, but malaria, I was in this community that was actually suffering with the bubonic plague. They still have the plague out in Madagascar. It's insane. And they had relatives who had recently died, and we rocked up because we wanted food, we wanted water. They said, stay inside your tents, we'll cook food and bring it to you. They brought food. It was eel. It smelled a bit funky. It was off, but we weren't 100% sure of that. Me and my guides were then eating it. And for the next few days, we were suffering with diarrhea. So the anti-malaria pills were going in one way, out the other. Didn't have my full protection. And then I contracted, I didn't know at the time, but I contracted the deadliest form of malaria. You know, there's 4 different strains. This one was falciparum. The positive, if there is a positive, is this is the only strain that you can completely eradicate from out of your system. But if you don't catch it in time, it will kill you normally within 24 hours. Whereas the 3 lower strains, they're not as deadly, but they can remain dormant in your system. Yeah. So I had the deadliest, and because of the anti-malaria pills, I actually had to walk for a good 4 to 5 days with the disease until I made it to a hotel, because I couldn't go into a hospital, because if a mosquito bites me and someone else, they've then got, you know, and she took my blood. I just remember it all blurry, you know, doctors' heads were spinning. I just collapsed sort of on the bed at the right time. And they came back and said, you know, if you were 3 hours longer, you would have potentially slipped into a coma. And that was 1 month into a 5-month journey, you know, and I lost 13 kilograms that week on the medication trying to sort of recover. And then I had to do another 4 months with a 35-kilogram backpack for the rest of Madagascar, which I still had 4 months left. So again, I learned a lot there. But you know what maybe the scariest one was? It was actually not me being in danger, my life. It was when a photographer joined me, a female from Brazil. She was hardcore. She was like a Lara Croft. So I said, love that. Yeah, she was nails. And so I said, yes, come and join me. And she joined for 2 to 3 weeks. And she had lots of mishaps along the way, bless her. You know, she almost couldn't wait to just get out, because I think there were lots of shit-faced, you know, from leeches to spiders. She had a leech bite on the face, actually, so she was just bleeding from the face. And we had a nighttime river crossing in the cyclone season. So picture this, it's pitch black, it's cyclone season. We're at a river, the Mava River, trying to get across to the other side before this next storm hits. And if this storm hits this river, we can't cross it for at least another few days. We've done all of the hunting and gathering we can do. We're all really hungry, and we're desperate to get to the village that we can almost see right in the distance. And so we had to get across this river. We saw a local who was there also trying to get across the same river. He must have been there for hours, but he was waiting for people so that he could form a human chain where we link up hands. So we linked up hands. Me and Max, my guide, had this argument about whether we should face upstream or downstream. I said upstream so we could fight the current and our toes can sort of curl in and like hook the rocks. And he was like, no, let's go downstream. We went downstream. Suzanne, who was with us, we're forming this human chain. We're following the local because this local knows the exact rocks to keep your head above the water. So our torches are shining in each other's face. We have to shout because the roar of the river is so loud. We're looking at the local and seeing exactly where he puts his feet. Otherwise, we're gone. And Suzanne missed her footing.
Oh my God.
And so she is hanging off mine and Max's grip. We're wedged in between the rock, doing everything we can. And it was at that point, not only the current and the strength of the river, but she was also wearing a backpack. So if we lost gripping, the backpack would have pulled her down. If she was lucky enough, and let's say the backpack sort of didn't pull her down too bad, and she didn't bang her head on all the rocks, if she survived all of that, it's crocodile infested. And there's crocs further down, and the Mava River is notoriously known for crocs. And it's nighttime, you know, and we were just like, oh God, I don't know how we did it. Something must have been on our side that day, but we managed to get her foot gripping, and we managed to cross to the other side. And, you know, she was in bits on the other side, and I was sort of like adrenaline, like, woo, we did it.
It's like a chest pump. Like,
yeah, I was like, yes, that was, how the hell did we survive that? You know, she's like in bits on the other side.
I bet. She's traumatized.
Yeah. And then, you know, we made it out the jungle. She went home. But that, I think, was scarier than the desert in malaria, because that's someone else's life on my journey, you know? I would have just felt somewhat guilty having agreed that she joins us on such a serious sort of world first record expedition. But yeah, so those are my three darkest. That was a long answer, wasn't it?
No, I like it's just fascinating listening to know that, like, things that, and I bet these stories that you're telling aren't even scratching the surface of like what you experienced.
Yeah, they're not.
You mentioned your darkest moments. What were the best moments?
Oh, there's too many, and I'm a sucker for this. I sort of forget the negatives and focus on the positives. So that I could overcome sort of, you know, the spiders, the leeches, the diseases that I've contracted over the time, and then I come back, and they sort of vanish, and I'm focusing more on the locals that I met, the adversities that I overcame, you know, that sort of brotherhood of, especially in Madagascar, of having Max with me. You know, it's like my Malagasy brother. We spoke a lot. We went through hard times. It was the lemurs above, wild lemurs sort of howling above us, getting in the smoke of the fire, because they're also getting just as irritated by the flies as we are. So the smoke just sort of clears the flies, and just to wake up and have lemurs above you and coming across sort of 80% of plant life and wildlife that's found nowhere else in the world. And, you know, the starry skies at night, so many sort of highlights, and crossing the finish line and, you know, being a man of my word, setting out and completing something I said to people that I would set out to do.
Do you think, I want to kind of touch on a little bit, I know it's not necessarily what we're here to talk about, but you mentioned sort of the brotherhood between you and Max. As a man, do you think that's important that men have that kind of camaraderie? Because I feel like we live in, to give context to my question.
Yeah.
I feel like we live in a world right now which is so connected online but so disconnected in real life. And a lot of the men that I speak to, I go, you know, who do you talk about these things? And, you know, where do you spend your time? And like, what are your hobbies and things? And they go, oh, you know, don't really have anyone. And it's because they're so focused on their career and like all that kind of stuff. And they might have some friends, but it's not like a true like brotherhood. Whereas with women, we have a completely different way of communicating. We're very social. We get our energy from each other and through talking and exchanging stories and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of the men that I've spoken to that have that kind of old school brotherhood of like, you know, going and hanging with the guys are so much more well-rounded and happy. Do you think that's important? Is that something that you have?
I think it is important, and I can see how it happens. I guess men are sort of more, I've noticed it with my friends, is as soon as they're locked down in a relationship, you just don't hear from them. And as soon as they come out of that relationship, hey buddy, should we go for a catch up? It's long overdue. And it's a case of, well, I was messaging and trying to organize a catch up whilst you were in that 1 or 2 year long relationship, and you kind of just disappeared off the radar completely. And so I've been really mindful with me and my girlfriend. We know that we're very connected and we've got our lives together, but it's equally important to have our individual ambitions and goals and friends and, you know, our own sort of set communities in a way. And I guess I have got that. I would like it more, but I do have that. I've got a very strong relationship with my dad. He's part of the business. He works.
Love that.
And it's great because no one's got you back as much as your dad, right? And so he's been there through the thick of it throughout. My brother, there's a 15-year age gap. He's 15 years younger. My parents were super young when they had me, but we are really solid, and, you know, communicate and sort of have shared interests and hobbies. And he loves what I'm doing, and he's sort of coming into that side whereby he wants to test himself and face adversity. But also really close with my sister as well, and my brother-in-law. And my friend, I guess, when I first set out for traveling age 19, all of those first experiences up until when I left for Mongolia were had with my best friend. He was always by my side. We were cycling Vietnam together. We were illegally crossing borders together, you know, and so those experiences were shared. And I do think, yes, it's important to be comfortable in your own setting and be alone and be able to sort of overcome things by yourself. But you've got that, it could be sisterhood, brotherhood, that, you know, that close knit community of whether it's family or friends, that there's no harm in asking for help or being reliant or just sort of sharing these experiences with them. I think when I've been out there in the wild, it's funny because the things I miss back in the West has always been, it's never really been skydive and do my first skydive, or
I'm doing my first in Dubai, by the way.
Oh, quality. You're going to absolutely love it. Yeah, you're going to love it. It's been the simple days doing absolutely nothing but being around my family or friends. You know, it could be like at nighttime, we're just like catching up, we've eaten together, you know, we're just like cup of tea and just stillness, nothingness.
Being together, but not even being together.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's crazy how that's and it's on these expeditions that I kind of realize, I know that I'm making an effort, but I need to make more of an effort because the years do go by, and I want to have a collection of very good experiences with people, close or not, distant. I love meeting new people all the time. I'm sort of trying to meet new people, whether that's the skydiving community, whether that's on podcasts, you know, whether that's shared experiences with strangers or family and friends. I think we are social creatures. And as much as I like to be out in the wild, sort of on my own, even more so, I love being with people. And I think that's important. I think people sort of don't try hard because they think they're always around people, but they're not connecting. Just because you've got people around you, you're not connecting with those people. You need to like really, really connect spiritually.
It's interesting you said about that kind of codependency in a relationship, because I noticed the same. Women do the same thing, by the way. Right. They get in a relationship and they just like disappear.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think it's because we're sort of told to find the one. It's like the person that completes us.
Yeah.
And so when you get in a relationship with someone, you love them or you care about them, you go, oh my God, this might be the one. So I have to put everything. I have to get all of my emotional needs from this person.
Yeah.
But you can't get all of your emotional needs met by one person. And so it's really important, I think, anyway, that you have boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, but then you also have other people that meet different needs that that person can't necessarily meet. It sounds like you've got a really healthy relationship with your girlfriend. I think a lot of people can learn from that, because there's such a thing that we have about putting everything into one person. It just always ends in disaster. No, I've done that, by the way, with my ex-husband. I did that.
Yeah, have you? Where you just put it all into...
he was the one, right? He was the one that I gave everything to. I don't necessarily mean the soulmate, but he was the one that I gave everything to, which meant that I isolated myself from all these wonderful people that were in my life. Not intentionally, but just it happens, right? And then when I took a step back from it, I'm like, well, I'm not getting any of my needs met here. I need to build out a tribe. There's a reason why it says it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to be part of a community, right? So you get different things from different people, different things from your mum, different things from your best friend, different things from a teacher, a mentor, or a stranger. Yeah. We all get different things from different people. And I think the expectation that the one, the soulmate, the this, that, and the other is going to give us everything we need is just totally false. And it's often probably why people end up getting divorced.
Potentially. Yeah, potentially they start losing other things that they had whilst they were single. And me and my girlfriend have always been very mindful of that. You know, we're each other's one, sort of whatever I do in my life will affect
You choose
her.
Each other.
More than it would affect my family, you know, my sister, my brother, my parents. So she's always the first person I'll discuss things with, and vice versa. But it's also really important that we know that she's got her parents and her sister that she can talk to, and she will need a break from this to, you know, go and connect with other females, you know, and I'll need my space to connect with other guys as well. And I think we've got that healthy balance whereby we're not too tied down or too in each other's pockets all the time. Maybe sometimes we feel like we are, but then we're very good at reminding each other. Like she's really good at saying, oh, you should go and chat with your dad, or go for a walk with him, or you should contact Manuel, your friend, and see what he's up to. And I'll be the same, you know, maybe call your parents, because she's Persian, so her parents are out and around. So it's a case of like she doesn't have that support here with her. So she needs to like make the effort, even though it's harder because they're long distance. She's got to put that effort in even more. So I think that is crucial.
I want to spin quickly, because I'm conscious of time, into your personal brand.
Okay.
And the opportunities that your personal brand has given you, including being on the Joe Rogan podcast. So first of all, what's he like?
He's a legend. He is the same guy off podcast as he is on. You know, I remember I rocked up, and it's sort of this big bunker in LA, like a big sort of man cave, if you like.
I love that. I want a man cave. Like, I want a female cave. Cool. I want a bar.
Me and my friend were confused. We were like, is this it, Jack? And like, yeah, it's got to be. Because there's no signs, there's no advertising. He's not going to advertise where he is. And then, you know, knocked on the door. There are these two big sort of bouncers that answer. But they were just like big teddy bears. They're like, sure, right, mate, come on in. We came in, and he was sort of interviewing Joey Diaz at the time. And, you know, Joe was showing us around. He's got the gym, he's got the cars, he's got the pool table, he's got the sort of branded coffee machine. He made us a turmeric latte or something. And we were just catching up. We were just talking before we went on podcast. And then even after the podcast, we were talking for a good while again. We want to do it again. He messaged only a couple of weeks afterwards saying that he's just come out of a restaurant with his wife, and there's a group of lads that were raving about the episode that we did. And so I was like, that's so cool to hear. But yeah, no, really cool guy. And you know, that happened. It's funny because when I tell people that I've sort of done it all myself, in terms of myself and my dad, because he's got my back. With that, it wasn't no sort of PR that reached out to him. I've not said this on many podcasts actually, but I pretty much set up an email that I wanted to send to him, and then got about 14 other email addresses and bombarded his email from like my sisters, my brother-in-laws, my mums, my dads, you know, changed the beginning and end, left the middle, just because I knew once he saw the story, I believe he's going to want me on the show. So I need to get my story, you know, to his eyeballs. I need to get him to read it. And it got one of his agents. The agent ran it by Joe, and he reached out to me not long after and said, I ran your story by Joe. He loves it. He wants you on the podcast. Can you be here in 2 weeks' time? I was like, yes. Yes.
I love that as a story. Going back to what we were saying earlier about you don't need a lot of resource. Like, every single person asks me, how did you do this? How did you get that the other? I'm like, you just fucking do it. Yeah. Like, you figure it out. Yeah. I have never had anyone post anything for me up until this point. Like, my team are helping with stuff now because it's at a different scale. Yeah. But up until this point, it's all been me. Every single thing that we've done has been me, and every single opportunity as a result of what I've done has come through me. And I think, to your point, like setting up 14 different emails to make the thing that you wanted to make happen. Like, what's your excuse, guys? Yeah. Like, what are you waiting for?
Exactly.
Like, if you want something, make it happen.
Yeah, for sure. And I've got another story that's even bigger than that, because this was a really important one. Was planning the Yangtze trip, 2 years in the making. And I had these different teams in place, production teams, logistics managers, and they weren't really working to get the green light to be able to, achieve Mission Yangtze, or to be able to just get to the start line. And I remember thinking, man, this has gone on for months and no one's really doing anything. They said they're doing stuff, or they'll see like, we've always got next year. But I really wanted to get this done. And this went on and on and on. And I thought, I know what I'm going to have to do. And it's a bit of a risk. But I created a press release, organized sort of a press conference style in Canary Wharf, traveled up from Wales. And I launched the announcement of Mission Yangtze. I tied these different sponsors and fixers and production teams' names to that press release. And I didn't have no visa for China. I didn't have the access or the permits to be able to even get to the source of the Yangtze. Nothing was planned. Funds weren't in place. Visa wasn't even obtained. But I launched that press release in my mind thinking, now the world is watching and they know that your brands are connected to this.
So you got to make it happen.
We have to make it happen. And it was a big risk. My friends and family were like, don't do it. Because if it backfires and you don't end up doing or go flying out there, then that's bad for your name. Because I'd already done Mongolia. I'd already done Madagascar. So I'd announced, it was like BBC.
Yeah.
It was a lot saying this is the next plan. But I thought, there's no other way. I'm going to have to. And it worked. They all started working.
Of course they did.
We got the finances for it and we made it happen, you know?
Sometimes
Hell of a
you
risk,
have
but
to buy whip or honey, huh?
Yeah.
If the honey doesn't work, you got to get the whip out.
Yeah.
And so in terms of like your personal brand and stuff, because obviously you have nearly 90,000 followers on Instagram and like you have various things in National Geographic and all these types of things. What has building your personal brand done for your career? Because obviously you do all this amazing stuff, but documenting that.
Yeah.
How has that changed your life?
Oh, dramatically. Like opportunities come out from random places that I never knew was a thing. After completing the Yangtze journey, I was then contacted by Dulwich College and did an Asia-wide speaking tour, you know? You're then contacted by different brands. I was reached out again by Huawei in China to do something on Snowdon. And then sort of that brings other people involved. The Joe Rogan really, really kicked things off. I was then contacted by Dwayne Johnson's agent, who manages Kevin Costner, Ronda Rousey. And I thought it was a spam email at first. I was like, what does he want with me? And he flew me out to LA and he was my agent then for the next 5-6 months just before COVID hit. And then there was nothing we could do. And we were sort of meeting up with the president of Nat Geo, the vice president of Discovery in Los Angeles, getting the next show idea out there. And this then enabled me to make more contacts off the back of it. It was insane. And that was pretty much just from getting myself out there, creating my own sort of press release and putting it online. And then bringing a PR involved sort of after the Yangtze trip, sending those 14 emails to Joe Rogan, getting that. And it just sort of just built from there. It crashed with the COVID. And so I was then like, right, I need to pick things back up. And we did. I've just come back from China from filming a 6.1 hour international TV show following the Great Wall of China, which was epic. Yeah. And so we've picked it back up again. But, the whole COVID really hit. I tried not to let it slow us down too much. But But with that, it's important for people to know that the struggles were crazy. And I still face them. Up to now, for sure, it has to be, no exaggeration, it has to be at least 2,000 rejections from different brands, magazines, papers, production teams, channels. I've been trying to break Channel 4 for like 8 years. Failed with Mongolia, failed with the Yangtze, failed with the Madagascar trip. But I've been persistent. I've been on it, because I know I need UK TV to really take off. But it's great. I've got China have really got my back. China have had my back since the Yangtze. That was on Nat Geo. We've got Tencent for this project, which is the biggest social media platform and the biggest channel across China, which is great. But I think I need something to take off in the UK or the US. And I can't talk too much about this, but we're that close to securing a big channel here.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, and I think that will really change everything. But when people see that, they'll be like, oh, wow, came to him easy, didn't he? He did these world records and straight in there with a channel. They won't realise that actually it's brought a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, because it's difficult trying to keep this afloat, keep the career. There's no going back now. This is what it is. But it's been a struggle, because effectively I'm not selling anything. I'm just relying on bringing TV involved and different sponsors to be able to sort of pursue different expeditions, which then I tie in sort of environmental angles, whether that's the WWF or the Lemur Network Conservation, or charities, and raise funds for them. So it's been a hell of a ball ache, and it has been very enjoyable on the expeditions. But even when I was, especially the last 2 latest trips, the Great Wall and the Yangtze, whilst I've been on these trips, I've been very mindful that I need to be proactive on social media. I need to capture the right footage. I need to deliver the right speeches or have the right meetings and interviews and book signings along the way of China. That's why it took 352 days as well, because it wasn't just the journey. I was sort of having to keep things afloat by doing book signings or presentations in cities that I would arrive at along the Yangtze River, And so it's been very full on, and I'm still learning. I'm still sort of trying to expand the team and seek outside knowledge and advice. But we're at a great place, but we just need to keep going. You know, it's one of those.
I'll have to introduce you to, we've got a friend, should we say, called Eric, who is very well known in Norway. And he, I think, was the first person to do solo expedition of the South Pole.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And he's a badass. Nice. Like, he's like ex-paratrooper. Like, just like, you guys would get on really, really well. But we're flying out to Oslo next week to film with him. But yeah, he's a pretty cool guy. I think you guys would get on really well. Okay, so again, like, we've gone so over time. I always do this. Like, get really interesting people on, and I'm like, I want interesting people on the podcast, but we can only have to have an hour, and it's always like ends up being like 2. But that's fine by me. If you, of all the things that you've done, and you know, I think a lot of people, I think the number one thing that always comes up when you read, like, you know, what do people say on their deathbed that advice they would give their, you know, you see all those things come up on Instagram. Yeah. And the number one thing that I always see come up is like, people regret the things that they didn't do. Okay. So what would you, like, fast forward 50 years, 60 years, 70 years. Yeah. What's your mission? Like, what do you want to look back and be like, yeah, I did it. Like, what's the North Star? What do you want the world to remember Ash Dykes by?
There's probably 2. There's the more selfish reasons, whereby, you know, I'm sort of achieving these world records and the setting, that it's not breaking records, it's setting firsts, you know, that has never been done before. And so there's that element that I would love to continue to do that, or even if I don't, these 3 expeditions will shine brighter in the future than they are right now, and people will take inspiration from that, and hopefully people will then create their own records, you know, fastest down the Yangtze or fastest across.
I'm going to beat Ash Dykes.
Yeah, you know?
Yeah, I think that.
For the reasons, selfish reasons like that, because everyone kind of wants to, well, not everyone, but people want to leave that legacy, right? And so I am more hungry for that. I would love to, you know, I've got my book out there, Mission Possible, but I'd like to get a few more out there and, you know, create more TV shows, you know, build the brand bigger and more globally, sort of international. But then you've got the other side, which is the more sort of raw and authentic reasons that I feel when I'm out in the wild. And that is just being a stand-up character, being positive under adversity, being cheerful, willing to help people, you know, known by my sort of close-knit family and friends as, you know, he lived life. He sort of really gave it his all, and was always quite jovial and quite smiley. And was always there to help people if they were struggling, you know? And so there's that side, which is the more real side with my family and friends and people sort of who I'm close with. But then you've got the other side. I think I've picked like 6, haven't I? Not 1.
Well, they sound very intrinsically linked, if I'm honest.
Yeah, maybe. Potentially, yeah.
Both of them strike me as the legacy that you want to leave is having a positive impact on people. Yeah. Yeah, because the things that you're saying you want your family and friends to say about you, who's positive as well, those are radiators to other people. They're not necessarily radiators to yourself. And you said there you want to inspire people to go and do the next course of being a radiator for other people. Yeah. I love that. What a legacy to leave, Ash. Yeah, it's beautiful. What's next?
I'm going to reverse it back to you quickly.
Oh God. Right. Okay. What is my legacy?
Yes.
It's funny actually. I always say to people, like, I want to do the 20 million thing, and like I want to have the pink Lamborghini. Like I have this like ongoing thing where I'm like, I want to have this pink Urus. Like that's like this ongoing thing. Okay, yeah. And it's not actually the Urus that I want to have. It's what the Urus represents that I've done in order to achieve it. And that's kind of the thing that I push out publicly. But actually the real thing that I want to leave as a legacy is helping people have the confidence to be self-preserving, like go out and take accountability for your own destiny. And I'm the personal branding thing is something I'm very passionate about. Yeah, it's my bread and butter. I love it. I die by this business, but that's not why I do it. The reason I do it is because of what personal branding can give you. It gives you the platform to get everything you want in your life. Yeah. But in order to do that, you have to become very, very confident in yourself. You have to be very, very confident in putting yourself out there and being told that you're wrong. You have to take accountability for your actions, what you say, because what you put out online is very permanent. And you also need to have kind of a level of like, I'm not going to wait around to be saved. I'm going to go and save myself. Yeah. And that's really what my core is like, come on guys, like like I was making the joke earlier about, please sir, I want some more. Like, let's stop waiting for a handout and go and save yourself.
Yeah.
The only way to stop yourself from drowning is to learn how to swim. And that's what I want my legacy to be. I want people to go, yeah, she taught me how to swim.
Yeah, solid values.
Yeah.
So important throughout all of life, isn't it? Yeah, for sure. I love that.
Learn how to swim.
Yeah.
I always ask, there's so many more things I want to ask you, but we know we're like 20 minutes over time.
Round two.
Yeah, we'll have to do round 2. I always ask this question at the end of every single episode, and it's, what are 3 things? I normally say 21-year-old self, but I want to go back to 19 because that's when you first did your first expedition. If you could go back to your 19-year-old self and you were sat across from him right now, what are 3 things that you would tell him that you wish he'd known?
Ooh, I would say, first I would give him a heads up that you're going to face a lot of shit, but you're going to get through it. That's an important one, because a lot of people face shit and unfortunately don't get through it, do they? And so I think some people need reminding that, yes, you are going to face some dark times, but it's kind of like that. The storm hasn't come to stay, it's come to pass. If you can weather it, you'll see brighter days after. And so I would say that. I would also say that you are far more capable than you anticipate. That's a big one. Something that I learned probably in Mongolia, and a message to your whole audience as well. I think we put a lot of sort of fear and doubt. I think they come as a package deal, actually, fear and doubt. And it's fear that is healthy. You need that. But the doubt that's the toxic one. And you eradicate doubt through repetition, through building up those track habits, through experience. And once you've eradicated doubt, the fear is still there, that's fine. But you don't doubt yourself. You have more confidence in yourself. So I would say that you're far more capable than you anticipate. What would the third one be?
Don't eat eel.
Don't eat that damn eel in that plague-infested village.
Smell your food before you eat it.
Yeah, smell your food before you eat it. I love it.
That's a really good lesson.
There we
to
go.
Be fair. I took one of the guys for afternoon tea the other day, and I was like smelling all the things. Right? He's like, "Why are you smelling it?" I was like, "I just want to see what it smells like."
Because you never know.
It's not the reason. I just like the smell of food. But yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Ash, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And 10 months in the making. Right, we finally made it happen.
We did it.